So over the weekend, I saw Avatar: The Way of Water, and man, I plan on making a versus video with the first movie, so I'll keep this brief. But this movie was... well, let's start with the story. Now, the story will either work for you or will just put you off. For me, I was perfectly fine with it. It's a revenge story for one particular character, and I had no issues with it at all because the revenge part was played out so well, and it resulted in our characters having to go in hiding. And the characters will also be something that you'll either love or hate, as Jake and Neytiri's kids in this movie have the generic bullies and they make a lot of stupid decisions. But honestly, I liked that too. The kids are kind of gullible and dumb, but it felt quite relatable, as when kids enter a new environment, the kids they come across act different from the ones they knew at home, so it's easy to get blindsided. And I gotta say, I really did care for the characters. For those that had complaints with the first movie's characters, and understandably so, you will have a much better time with the characters in the sequel. This movie is very much about family, and I loved the way this movie showcased that. And the visuals, they are the best we have seen in the entire movie industry. The landscapes, the world around them, the lighting, the shadows, the facial expressions, you could actually see the actors' faces in the CGI. I could recognize Zoe Saldana and Sam Worthington in the faces of these CGI characters far more than I could in the first film, and everything down to the last speck looked so real, and the effects looked especially beautiful in the last half hour. Really, the effects never let up for a moment, and it was so seamless that you completely forget that the characters you're watching are CGI. The 3D was great too, and James Cameron reminds the industry how 3D is done. My only complaint is that the flying scenes were not as immersive with the 3D as they were with the first film. But yeah, Pandora still looks great, and as soon as they get into the water, you could honestly just stay there forever. It was that beautiful. Even the battles near water with the ships and everything was so good. The action and special effects really do put the water effects in last month's Black Panther: Wakanda Forever to shame. And that's another thing, the action was spectacular and so well done, and the camera angles and cinematography was absolutely impeccable. As for the stuff I didn't like, well, for one, the movie follows a lot of story beats from the first movie. The other thing I didn't like was how the villain from the first movie came back. I won't give any spoilers, but it was really quite silly to me and felt like a retcon. I also thought the movie could have been trimmed up with its runtime just a little bit. But aside from that, I didn't really have any complaints, and I really did love this movie. Avatar is one of those movies that tells a very basic and simple story, but it does it with such a giant scale and a gigantic passion for filmmaking and VFX that I honestly just get so immersed into it. And there was some really good emotional stuff in the movie too, and the movie just feels so high quality. And after watching so many of these MCU movies and more that are coming up with their CGI worlds, they just feel very lifeless and feel like they're full of a lot of flat and unfinished green screen. And it's just so refreshing to watch a movie that knows how to use a CGI properly to truly enhance the experience. And again, I can't emphasize enough how much I really enjoyed the family dynamic in this movie, and the visuals definitely help bring all of it together. As always, my score can change in my versus video once I've had more time to think about it, but for now, my score for Avatar: The Way of Water is a 9 out of 10. I really did enjoy this movie, and it's definitely one of the best theatre experiences I've had this year. Like really, my audience was actually well behaved for once, which is becoming increasingly rare with modern audiences these days, but you could just tell that everyone was treating this as an event that we don't get every year, as opposed to comic book movies which we get all the time. I can only assume that with comic book movies they think they can talk through them, as we'll just get another one the very next week. Both this and The Batman had well behaved audiences in my cinema. The only problem was one idiot behind me asked his wife if she had seen the first movie. Clearly he just had to ask her that whilst the movie was on, as well as a couple of other things here and there. But aside from those couple of instances, I had a very good experience watching this movie. So those are my early thoughts on Avatar: The Way of Water. Is it better than the first movie? Well, stay tuned for the versus video to find out.